Good evening, Warband. I hope you've all got your red robes on, because we are back with a Red Pill Cult meeting, continuing our series of digging into the history of Think Before You Sleep, which he'd much rather he wouldn't. But the internet was kind enough to back everything up. So now that it's on my hard drive, he's shit out of luck. So, ah, we got a lineup today. I'm actually a little more organized than usual. So, we're just going to hit the record for the segment. And we're going to... Oh, wait. I forgot. Important preparation. We got to set this to 2 times speed. Because I am not dealing with this guy at his normal speed. Speed 2 times... 1.5 times speed. We'll go with that. You got through all the Elden Ring playthrough? Jeez, crazy. All right, so we'll give a little bit of backstory first of all for new viewers, since it has been a couple months at least. So, Sean of Think Before You Sleep used to do static image videos, and he used to heavily promote MGTOW. In fact, we will be getting into a section down the line where basically every single one of his videos had MGTOW in the title. And he was probably up there as one of the more popular MGTOW YouTube content creators. He even paid Sandman for some advertising at the time, which honestly probably wouldn't be a bad idea. I should consider doing that myself. However, then he got big enough that he decided he could ditch the audience that actually brought him up and make the transition to the mainstream. And when he did that, he either changed the title of or deleted basically every single MGTOW video. But thanks to the effort of people at the MGTOW Mirror Project, unfortunately disbanded, and whatever archive Matriarchy found this collection in, all of his old videos were thankfully preserved. And now they're on my hard drive. So he accused his detractors of not doing proper research into his past. So I thought, you know what? Let's take a look at your past. Let's actually do the research. And thus I have become a scholar of Think Before You Sleep, and we're tackling a couple of his videos every single cult meeting. Awesome Boss, were all of his videos saved? The archive that I've got right now is 144. Can I say for sure that is every single one of his videos? No. I can't say for sure, but it's at the very least most of them. Like, it's definitely all the ones that he wanted deleted at the very least. All the important ones. Hey, Matria, credit where credit is due. You found the archive, and I'm thankful for it, because otherwise I only had enough videos for a couple more episodes. So, we're just going to get into this, and this particular one, just going to hit record here. So, we are going back into examining the hidden history of Sean of Think Before You Sleep. Starting with video episode 33 right now, leftists are getting a dose of karma. 1.5 times speed, so we don't take forever on this. Let's just jump right into it.
I'm making this video because somebody in one of the comment sections of one of my videos posted that he did not believe in karma. And we had a little back and forth, but he basically said that he didn't believe in karma because politicians get away with bad things in this country. And, well, he hasn't seen any sort of payback. Well, what I've learned in my life is that no matter what, people who do bad things always get punished in some way. Now, a lot of these things are a little bit...
Okay, I'm just going to stop you right there because that's stupid. There is no cosmic force in the universe that has a sense of objective right or wrong that is going to perform any sort of corrective action. Because just because you find what someone does to be quote-unquote bad or wrong does not mean that any force in the universe is required to do anything about it. bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people. If you're going to look and say, like, oh, everybody gets their comeuppance eventually, it's like, okay, yeah, if you live long enough, something bad's going to happen to you. That doesn't mean that it happened because you did something bad in the past. Like, yeah, there's negative consequences for actions that some people would consider bad. But people who do horrible shit get away with it. And then maybe eventually something bad happens to them. Maybe it doesn't. But trying to believe in a force like karma because bad things will happen to people sometimes, foolish. But whatever. Let's keep going.
Bit less obvious, but they do certainly exist if you pay attention well enough. Like speaking of politicians, speaking of people who are in Hollywood, one of the most obvious examples of that is all these people who are promoting these terrible ideas in films. Like some of these philosophies that they show in films are just, well, certainly a lot of the philosophies of feminism that I was taught as a kid ruined pretty major portions of my life. So certainly I like to see some payback in that case. And well, a lot of payback has been gotten in Hollywood with the Me Too movement. You know, all these people who are promoting this shit are getting accused of being rapists. And it's more like the snake eating its own tail, kind of like feminism has intersectional feminism, which is like, now you're not feminist enough. If you're white and feminist, you don't count. And so it's it's funny to watch these people just kind of kill themselves. Like,
Okay, well, that's more so you create a weapon and then you get hit by the weapon. That's not karma, that's just consequences. Like, people straight up warn about it, like, hey, maybe you should be promoting something that can be used against you. Maybe you shouldn't be arming people with weapons that they can turn on you. That's not karma, that's not some sort of divine force, that is predictable consequences that anybody could see.
even recently with the whole Vic Mignogna thing, we have all these voice actors accusing Vic Mignogna of doing all these terrible things, and people like Neil Kaplan, who said he was disgusting, he was late for this panel, and he's done all these, he rubbed his dick against my neck and all these terrible things, has now been accused of being a creep by another convention attendee who was, I think a lot of these voice actors have people kind of show them around, help them out with the conventions, and so one of the people that was doing that, he was soliciting for sex and had multiple times invited her up to his room, despite the fact that she had been clearly not interested. And so that's out there with actual evidence of him being a creep. Now,
well, yeah, that's projection. This video is fairly old, I'll be honest. But we see it even more nowadays, where you can pretty reliably predict the kind of criminal activity that people do by the criminal activity that they accuse others of with little to no evidence. It's not really that hard. But keep going.
of course, that's not nearly close enough to sexual assault to accuse anybody of anything terrible, but it's like, that's already worse than what Vic Mignogna did. And even Monica Rial, who's saying all these terrible things, like if you say one small criticism against Monica Rial, she's got friends on Twitter who are banning people and are getting their accounts turned off because she doesn't like evidence. And so she's accusing Vic Mignogna of being this terrible person. But it turns out the very things that she accused Vic Mignogna of being a creep for, she's done this same exact thing, and people have thrown in evidence. And by the way, when people have posted this to her Twitter account, she's calling it harassment, and she says, well, I'm going to send this to my lawyer and send this to the authorities, which is ridiculous. Not only is that not the case, but she's proven that she's a clear idiot. And you kind of wonder, why would you want that kind of press? It's like, what's so valuable about you accusing Vic Mignogna of sexual assault or basically raping children that you would stick to it this much? Like, what have you taken from him? So that's yet to be seen. I think
well, that's far more just circling the wagons, people backing each other up in the industry, partially because they like the feeling of having a petty amount of power over someone else who's far more popular than them, and partially because they've got skeletons in their closet that they don't want brought to light, so they feel the need to jump on the bandwagon in order to somewhat protect themselves from the accusations of everyone else. Like, anyone who's been through or is familiar with communist societies knows that it is your neighbors you need to be the most afraid of, because they're the ones that are going to report you to the Stasi if there is anything that the Stasi can use to take away your resources and redistribute it to them. Not rocket science here.
people was alleging that she was going to get some big position that Vic had at Rooster Teeth or something like that, but I don't know if that's big enough. There must be something that's behind this that, well, Funimation has already been thrown into the feminist agenda, where they've specifically changed at least one dub of anime to show a feminist patriarchal message. that was not in the original anime. So it could be something like that because Vic Mignogna is a Christian. But anyway, there's a little dose of karma of, well, basically at this point, because people hate this shit on the internet, it's hard to say what's going to happen to Funimation because they've allowed themselves to be run by social justice warriors. And it's not just Monica, it's several people that are major players at Funimation that agree with the SJW message, which, by the way, people who watch anime, people who watch YouTube, people who are largely viewing stuff on the internet on demand don't like feminism. And so Funimation is going to pay pretty big dividends for this.
Yeah, I guess that they're probably still going to have to pay it down the line. Again, it's one of those, well, eventually something's going to happen. I'm pretty sure that this video was made pre-COVID, and now we're in the post-COVID. Well, not post-COVID, but at the very least, most people don't give a crap about COVID. It's 2023. And so what? Actually, this video might be around COVID. Anyway, point being, Funimation is not dead. Maybe no one cares about them anymore, but it's not like Funimation has completely gone under. And the voice actors that screwed around with Vic Mignogna, they still think they're relevant. They're still talking crap. So, again, to say, oh, well, they're getting karma, is like, no, they're getting slaps on the wrist and they're getting called out. But for karma to actually kick in, like, these people would actually have to have their lives damaged to the extent that Vic Mignogna did. Again, the only good thing that I see out of the whole Vic Mignogna case is that it woke up a crap ton of people. Very much the same way that this whole Russell Brand situation is smacking a bunch of people awake. Because now they're realizing, holy crap, like, this is beyond bullshit. And clearly both, like, the government and all these social media platforms are in on it. And where's the evidence? Absolutely fucking none. Some bullshit testimony that's probably AI generated. But that's enough. That's enough for major companies and the government to screw with people. And if it happens to a big name celebrity, then that's that many more people that are shaken out of their comfort zone. So to me, whatever, this stuff's going to happen. It's all sacrifices to get people to reevaluate the things they take for granted. But let us continue.
For sticking to this message, and it may be the end of their company. Certainly, I hope so, because they've done something very disgusting. They deserve to go down. I will never buy anything from Funimation after this whole thing. And they've still not admitted any kind of fault. They're still kind of holding the line, so you know what? I'm going to hold the line and never buy any of your products again. Despite the fact that a lot of the properties from anime that I like are dubbed by Funimation, I think I will just stick to the Japanese titles. But it started before that. Like, the big thing was back in 2016. Now, in 2016, we already had a couple years of anti-feminism. Anti-feminism didn't become popular on the internet until maybe 2014 or so with the, I don't know, was Anita Sarkeesian in 2014? There were a lot of feminist/atheist channels that were saying lots of really, really dumb shit. And, well, then the skeptic community grew because of that. And now we have anti-feminism as we see today. And so this message isn't very, very old. And it seems to be when you get the truth out there, it works, bam, like that, like real quick. Because this stuff, this information, the internet has not been around that long in terms of competitiveness with actual media. This is all very, very new, and it's creating this huge, massive effect, this massive topple-down effect on the left. And that big loss that the left had, the big dose of karma they had, was the Hillary Clinton defeat. I really thought that Hillary Clinton was...
Hillary Clinton's defeat is karma? No, that's not karma. That's Hillary Clinton being such a hated politician that despite the best efforts of the politicians, she did not make it in. Despite all her best efforts, she still was not able to beat Trump. And what? Like, is Biden karma? Like, this was definitely made before Biden. It was like, oh, Hillary's loss is karma. It's like, okay, so what's Biden? What's Biden? Is that karma too? No, assigning this stuff to karma is like, no. You can't just say that, oh, hey, this, like, you can't say something happened to these people that made them upset, therefore that is a karmic response to them being assholes. The universe does not care about whether or not humans are shitty to each other.
...to be president. She had all the polls going for her. Everybody was saying she was going to win, and then she lost. And who thought that would happen? Most people thought Trump was going to lose. Most people thought Trump was going to lose by a fucking landslide. But she lost. And then it continues from there, because we certainly have had a lot of bigger things like the Patreon event that happened with Sargon of Akkad, where he got banned from Patreon for saying the N-word to a bunch of white nationalists. And the only reason why they found out that he did that is because a bunch of white nationalists who were trolling him sent the video to Patreon staff multiple times. And so it's like, well, you guys say you're so anti-white supremacy, but you just took information from a white supremacist group to get rid of somebody who's fairly rational and was just making a joke. And so people see that, and the truth comes out about that. And holy shit, Patreon was previously a reasonably successful company, is now in trouble of being destroyed. And it's
Yeah, well, they're not destroyed. They're still functioning, and it's been several years since. So, again, I'm still not seeing this karmic backlash. Yeah, they get short-term backlash, but they're still functioning. They're still around. Maybe by this time next year they won't be. I don't know, because they're certainly not trusted. But if they're going to support the side that will be... If people will still give money to Patreon despite this, if they're like, oh, well, I really don't like Patreon's politics, but I'm still going to give them money to support my favorite creators, like, okay, then that's why Patreon's going to continue to succeed, and why the people who hate you are going to continue to succeed. I mean, the closest thing we've had to any sort of actual consequences would be Bud Light losing, 30% of its market share with the Dylan Mulvaney stuff. Again, there's negative consequences to actions, but it's not karma. Because the kind of things that people would get upset over, that's subjective. Or is everything bad that happens to people on the right karmic backlash for things that people on the right have done that people on the left don't like? Like, where's this objective morality here if your only basis is people's lives suffer, and somehow that's a consequence of their previous actions as dictated by the universe due to the subjective morality of viewers? Let's just keep going. Whatever. Let's keep going. 3.5 minutes to go.
come out. I'll post this video in the description. There's a recent Sargon of Akkad video where he discusses some of this stuff, where Patreon basically is in shitloads of debt, and they're nowhere near paying it off. Plus, they've got shitloads of negative press because of the anti-hate speech thing. And if anybody becomes competitive with them, they're pretty much done.
Subscribe goes competitive. Cash App's out there. Skrill exists. There's also direct PayPal links. So, yeah, they have competitors. There's also like OnlyFans, Fansly. No, Patreon has competitors. They've had competitors for years. So, yeah, sorry, Sean, your prediction here was absolute horseshit. Let's keep going.
And more recently, a giant dose of karma has been dealt to a lot of different leftist media corporations. And I'm sure if you have not heard this yet, you will be happy to hear that the likes of BuzzFeed, Vice, and Huffington Post are now going through massive layoffs. Vice, the company that would sit there and alter a Jordan Peterson interview to make it seem like he said a bunch of things he didn't, and they've had multiple cases of them doing that. BuzzFeed, which posts tons of videos that are racist, like that. That video is like 38 things that white people need to do in 2019 or whatever it is, or 2018, whatever that shit was last year or 2 years ago, I think at this point.
I think Vice is closed. BuzzFeed, I mean, I think that they've largely been replaced by AI at this point. I don't know if they're completely dead, but yeah, like they suffered. But the thing is, tech, like all these tech sites as a whole, they were propped up by investor funding to begin with. They were never profitable. It was just a bunch of investors deciding, hey, let's throw money into this and hope for some sort of future profit. And it's only when these investors realized that they weren't going to get their money back out of it and started pulling it that these places collapsed. They were always going to collapse. It's not negative consequences for their actions. It's a shitty business model to begin with.
Huffington Post, which posts a lot of stupid shit about catcalling and Me Tooing and how all men are rapists. Well, good. Now they're laying off shitloads of their staff because people don't watch their shit anymore, because people don't read their stuff anymore, because they sit there and lie all the time. So that's how this stuff is getting transmuted. It's going to be a little bit less obvious, but people never get away with anything. You're always, if you do a bad thing.
People get away with shit all the time. Just because something bad eventually happens to them doesn't mean that it's some sort of freaking karmic response. And sure, okay, yeah, the writers of the Huffington Post might suffer, perhaps. Like they might get fired and then have to go on strike or whatever. But what about the people who back them? What about the financiers, the people at the very top who enabled and pushed all this stuff, thinking that it would line their own pockets? They aren't broke or destitute. The people at the top who enabled, promoted, and pushed all this, they're getting the golden parachutes. It's just such a short-sighted view of the larger picture. And and again, to say that, well, this is proof of some sort of universal force of karma. No, this is just consequences for stupid people who didn't think far enough ahead to realize that they were digging their own grave. But for the people who are smarter than them, people who are smart enough to see the consequences and know when to dip or to know to keep their heads down and not make it obvious their involvement, they're going to get away with shit. Because karma doesn't exist and people do not get to dictate the actions of the universe through subjective morality.
Bad things will always come to. I mean, maybe it's like, let's say you're that politician that this person was talking about. You do a bunch of terrible things to the people that are around you, and then your wife goes ahead and divorce rapes you and ruins your life.
You know, Trudeau comes to mind when that happens, but are you seriously trying to say that? Okay, because you know what? Here would be the other thing with that. What you're saying then, Sean, is that every man who has ever been taken through the ringer of divorce court did something to deserve it, equivalent to politicians screwing over their people. This is the ultimate problem that I have with karma, because it straight up says that every single bad thing that happens to you, you have done something to deserve it. And that's not true. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. The universe gives no fucks.
Because if you're going to be that terrible, you will start to attract people who are terrible too, and people who would not have problems with doing things like that to you. So let that be a little win in your sales. Now, certainly, this is not a complete victory. The battle has not been won yet, but it says things are going enough in the right direction that things might be actually changeable. But let's make no mistake that when this crisis occurs, when feminism completely collapses, and when these people have zero power, we have to do what's necessary. And of course, we know what allows all this to...
Oh, what's necessary? Like, completely jump over to their side and instead become fairly milquetoast on it and delete all your past videos? Yeah, Sean, I wonder if you looked at this video, what kind of karma is supposed to come to you? Oh yeah, it's going to be having a couple kids with your Sid the Sloth girlfriend, and then she's going to send you through the ringer of divorce court. That's going to be the karma. And then we're going to have a party stream. Or at least Chronic is, and I'll be sure to join in. Let's wrap this up.
This stuff to go on is the female vote without responsibility. And because women have never been responsible to clean up the mess that's created by their bad votes, while men have always been responsible. And even if the cases that men voted a bunch of bad shit, well, men are going to be the ones who pay most of the taxes. Men are going to be the ones who have to go to war. Men are going to be the ones who have to clean up the mess if a mess occurs. And so allowing someone who's not responsible for the mess to be cleaned up to create the mess, well, is only going to create more mess because,
Hey, Matria, look. Just because they might not biologically be his kids does not mean that they won't legally be his kids. So long as he's the one paying for their child support, it doesn't really matter.
I got away with this. Let's see if we can get away with a little bit more. Let's see if we can get away with more than that, or how about even more than that. And of course, the only way that's going to happen is if we say no to this shit. We say, I'm not going to clean up your fucking mess anymore. And, well, I think we're getting close to that point where we actually can. We actually have enough people to do this. So I will leave it at that. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, comment if you have anything else to add, if you have any more, well, if you know of any more things I've left out, any more doses of karma that have not been put in this video, how about you throw one of those in the comment section below. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that this video is one of the many that he's wiped from his channel, so if you want to leave any comments behind on this, you won't be able to do it on his, so please put them here. I'm sure that there's plenty of people who would have a couple other things to say, and, if you want to start a war in the comment section about whether or not karma exists, hey, engagement for me is good. All right, so that's that section. We'll skip ahead to
Yesterday
the
I was
next
thinking,
one.
and I realized.
So this one's called "The Communists Are Right." Well, yeah, I guess. And summary for that last one: no, I can't really have any faith in karma because again, bad things happen to good people. Good people, like bad people, get away with shit. And what is good or bad is largely subjective. Who gets to dictate who karma goes to? No, it's just bad shit happens. And people are just trying to rationalize why bad shit happens. But no, that's the thing, Archnight. Like, again, if we're going to say that like karma is real and bad things happen because people deserve it, then yeah, there's a lot of men who apparently did absolutely nothing wrong, but surely they must have done something extremely wrong to suffer such consequences. Like, no. Bad shit happens to good people. In fact, bad shit probably happens more often to good people than it does to bad people. Because when bad shit is. People who do. Like a thief is going to be more aware of other thieves than someone who isn't a thief. The people who do bad shit's probably less likely to happen to them, or at least bad shit of the brand that they inflict on others. Whereas good people, people who actually are kind of starry eyed and optimistic, they're far more likely to be the ones taken advantage of because the idea of a bad person doesn't cross their mind, feels alien to them. And you can look out, you can see this in many modern societies, like especially in the West. People are encountering completely unreasonable people and they have no idea what to do. Well, yeah, Matri, the thing is, like, Think Before You Sleep is talking about karma not in the reincarnation, I believe, Hindu sense, but more so karma where, like, you're punished for stuff in your current life later in your current life. It's the Western concept of karma, not the Hindu concept of karma. Oh, no, no, no. No, August Line. Not him losing his channel. Like, losing his channel would be one thing. No, no, no. Him losing his channel, it would be bad enough, but it's got to happen after he has kids with Venti. Because if, or at least kids that are legally his and Venti's. Because if he loses his channel now, then Venti can ditch him and there's no serious long term consequences. It's just who he feels sad. No, no, no. Venti's got to pop out some crotch dumplings, have Sean sign the birth certificate, and then his revenue has to drop far enough that he's going to get screwed over in family court when she divorces him. It's too soon. Oh, but jumping right into the next one, episode 34 of Think Before You Sleep's archives, the communists are right. And you know what? He might have a point. Let's get into it.
Yesterday I was thinking, and I realized that I put off certain things as a sacrifice to make it so that I can run this YouTube channel and so that I can spend more time focusing on Japanese so I can push for fluency. But if I'm going to record videos for a channel where I talk about philosophy and record videos for a channel where I talk about human nature and how people work and basically all the culmination of knowledge that I've gotten from reading and listening to people for the past 10 years or so, if not more than that, then I have to actually participate in that activity. And I kind of gotten complacent where it's like, well, I've already got 10 years of experience with this. I'm not going to run out of topics. But I think if you're really going to be onto it, if you're really going to be the person who's worth listening to, you have to basically be constantly studying this stuff. You know, one of the things that Jordan Peterson says in his speech is that if you're going to give a speech, you have to know 10 times what you're talking about. Or at least you have to be ahead of the people you're teaching. And the way you stay ahead of those people is to be constantly studying to where the point that they can't ever catch up. And so I've neglected some of that for the past 2 months. And yesterday I was kind of going over my head of why that was. And mostly it's because I'm tired. I'm tired of
Yeah, well, you know what else you should have done, Sean? You should have learned how to operate a live stream, because I don't do this for a living. I don't make money off of YouTube. And yet I can clearly run a live stream and engage with an audience much better than you were able to, and probably still are able to. I don't know. I don't actually watch your shit anymore. This is probably the close I get to your content, and it brings me no small amount of satisfaction that you don't get a cent off of my viewership. But seriously, you've been waffling around for a minute in an 18-minute video, so strap in, everybody. This one's probably going to be a while.
of doing tons of other work that's probably a little bit more relevant. So I thought, you know, reading can go by the wayside. Some of these philosophy channels I listen to, they can go by the wayside because I've got other important things to do. And, well, it's going to hit me at some point. So I figured I'd get back to it. And I was looking around and I realized, well, I don't have any books that it's probably been the big issue is that I haven't really bought any books that I'm interested in reading. And so I've kind of just let things go. And yesterday I said, I can't do that. If I let this go too much, I'm gonna throw myself out of reading. I'm gonna let it go far too long, and eventually I have to rebuild all the work it took me to get to read in the first place. And so I looked around and I looked at a book that I've had for about 10 years. It's called The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, I believe. Oh, it's right here. Yeah, The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. I was right the first time. And I've had this, well, when I bought this, I was a socialist. I bought this when I was in college.
You used to be a socialist. Okay. Let's just mark that down in the points of history for Think Before You Sleep. Is you sure you're not still a socialist? Let's keep going.
College when I had a very, very communist professor. And he recommended this book, as a lot of people on the side of socialism recommend the book. And after reading about 20 pages of it, I can see why. It's a story of the victim. And I imagine they will continue that story throughout the entire book. And the reason I picked this book is I looked at it and said, yeah, it's been a little bit. You know, I don't have very many books to read. And it's been a while since I've actually read the opposing points. And it's my belief that we should constantly be looking at the other side. And certainly all the great debaters.
Yes, Arch Knight, but we have to keep in mind, while Sean may have been a socialist, he probably wasn't a national socialist. Very, very important distinction to make between the two. But let's keep going. Although I will say this, most socialists throughout history have been globalists. And that's really what set Mustache Man's party apart from the larger amount of socialists, is that they were national socialists. Let's keep going.
We'll do that. In fact, here's the thing. Because I was in martial arts for about 6 years or so.
6 years of martial... Okay. So we have... All right, well, we'll just kind of go through. I'm trying to remember all the little details. So, martial arts for 6 years at an undetermined point, which, heck, for all we know, means he took karate as a kid. Then he went to college for physical sciences, some sort of exercise science. And I guess there he became a socialist, and from then he went on to be a yoga instructor for a while. And then after that, he became this online YouTube philosopher, I guess he describes himself as. So we'll go with that. I'd have to go back and review all the old details that he's put out to try to put together a rough timeline of this guy's history. But we've literally got over 100 episodes of his stuff to get through, so that's going on the back burner. Let's keep going.
And during this time, what would happen is that you would fight people in your dojo or in your studio. Dojo is the Japanese word, studio is the English word. and you would be the best person in the dojo. You're the green belt. Now maybe you're not the black belt level, but you're like the green belt. You're the best green belt in your dojo. The problem with that is that when you're in your own house, you're fighting people who you're used to. The second you walk out into your first competition to fight people who you're not used to, holy crap, it's way different. And I had that experience when I was a green belt. Green belt's like halfway to black belt, and that's usually the case with most Japanese style martial arts, though not always. But this is when I was a white belt, or maybe it was a yellow, but yellow belt's usually right after white belt. Depends. If you're in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's not the case. But for most Japanese martial arts, that is the case. And so I was the best yellow belt in the dojo because there was only like 3 of us. And I went to compete, and I got my ass kicked. Because I never looked at what other people were doing. I'd never been competitive with other ideas. In fact, maybe I can give a better example for those who play video games, is that I just bought an online pass for Nintendo so I can play Super Smash Bros. Online. And I played that game for probably actually more than 10 years. Because I played Melee, I played Brawl, and I skipped a generation because I didn't want to buy a Wii U. And so now I bought a Switch recently just so I could play this game. And well, one of the things you do if you're going to be an effective player in Super Smash Bros. Or any fighting game is that you get a benefit that you don't have in real life, is that I can sit there and play somebody else's character. So I might be a person who plays Mario, but I could also play Captain Falcon. Or I could play Marth, or I could play Young Link. I can play all these different characters, and the benefit of doing that is that even if I'm not going to get good at these guys, I know how their moves work. Because there are certain particulars, like if you play Marth, who's a sword user, and you hit somebody at the very tip of the sword, it launches them across the screen. It has more fighting power. I believe it actually does more damage to the character as well. And I'm not necessarily going to know that unless I actually play the character and mess around with them and play in their shoes, even if I don't intend to be that character.
No, you don't need to actually play the character and mess around. You could literally just look up a guide, how to kick ass as Marth. There's probably a million of them. And considering that Marth has been a character since Melee, and a very well-liked character since Melee, you don't need to play with the character to know these tips. This is tutorial level stuff. And if nothing else, there'd be various elements of skill, but yeah, like, okay, learning how to use different characters. Let's see if he gets to the bloody point, because right now he's just waffling on about how you need to study what other people would do. But that's the thing, like saying, oh, well, I used other characters in Smash Bros. So I understand people's different fighting disciplines. Like, no. What you would do in, a real world competition is you'd watch other people in competitions, or you'd spar with a greater number of people. Or, maybe if we had to use the Smash Bros. Metaphor, you'd record your Smash Brothers games where you get your ass handed to you, and then you would rewatch the footage and try to see everything that your opponent did that kicked your ass. In a martial arts sense, same sort of deal, although admittedly I'm not super familiar with martial arts competitions at the level of yellow belt. I did a little bit of practicing karate with myself, and there was more so demonstrative competitions rather than fighting competitions at that level. But I suppose different dojos, different countries would have different systems for that. Regardless, let's keep going. We're just a little over a quarter of the way through this.
I at least know how to fight them better. I at least know to avoid, hey, when he starts building distance so he can so he can hit you with the tip of the sword, start dodging or start moving away so they can't do that. And so if I can sit there and look at my opponent's ideas and I can argue their points, often,
you are not going to be able to be like, oh, hey, you need to dodge out of the way of their sword when they start swinging to avoid the tips. Like, no, what that means is you realize that it is far safer to be right up next to Marth than to have some distance, and to understand the length of distance of his sword and the lunge distance. Where's Chaz when you need him? He'd be the one who'd probably flip the shit out on all the different fighting game mechanics, but point is, even for Smash Bros. Advice, this is bloody stupid. And again, we're a quarter of the way through this, and he still hasn't gotten to the actual point. But that's nothing new for his content.
Typically on the side of socialism, they're not really that good at arguing. They believe the idea because they don't really research that much. They don't look at the totality of what's being done with socialism and communism. Because typically when they do, they tend to go against it. So those people are typically not very, very good at arguing. So even in things like a lot of people who believe in communism haven't even read the Communist Manifesto. That's like a big deal.
Nah, the people who like communism are losers who can't provide for themselves, so they like the idea of them being rewarded for being weak. But, maybe he's got some sort of larger point here, and I'm going to be proven a fool for what I just said. Let us see.
Because the Communist Manifesto is only 45 pages. I think I read it about 4 or 5 months ago. It's a really easy read. I think I read it in like one day. And so you're touting that you're this big believer in communism, this big believer in socialism, but you haven't even read its initial like the Constitution. So of course it's going to be very easy to defeat your arguments. Going to be very easy to knock down because you don't even know your own arguments. I could probably argue your points better than you. And of course they don't want to look at this because they don't want to be wrong. There's a giant fear of being incorrect. There's a giant fear of having. I've had these ideals for 15 years and they could be totally wrong. Well, yeah, but get used to it. I've been wrong quite a lot. In fact, just recently I was talking to my friend about the Michael Jackson case, and I said, well, he's definitely a pedophile. Michael Jackson certainly has all the markers of being a pedophile, and the evidence produced would, even if he got acquitted, or even if he actually got acquitted in 2005 and he settled in 1993, even though there was all this stuff around it where it's like they were sleeping in the same bed as the kids, they had like these alarm systems and stuff like that that didn't make sense unless he was a pedophile. It turns out I was totally wrong about that. Turns out it is very, very clear when all the evidence is given that Michael Jackson was falsely accused of being a rapist. And I will put a video in the description of the argument for Michael Jackson not being a pedophile. The allegations of him sleeping in the same bed as children were not even true. The fact is that he has a room, and his room is the size of a duplex. It's huge. It's like the size of a small house. And so they didn't sleep in the same bed. They slept in the same room, which was, again, 2 stories and huge. So that changed the whole story entirely. And it turns out I was completely wrong about that. And as far as it goes, Michael Jackson in my head, who I thought was a rapist for a good 10 years, is now with evidence that I was not aware of, it turns out he is not a rapist. And so there's a way that your ideas can be changed by looking at different opinions. Sometimes there's a full-on shift. Sometimes it's like this. And here comes the title of the video, is that when you look at things like communism and look at things like socialism, and the idea is very, very popular, I think the only way an idea can get popular is that there's some sort of truth to it. There's some sort of correct aspect of it.
No, stupid ideas get popular. Flat Earth is popular. Is it true? No. I'm trying not to lose this channel immediately, but there are very popular ideas right now, accepted all the way up to the highest levels of government in many Western countries. Are they true? No. But the lies are profitable. And if the lie is profitable, then it is true. Well, no, sorry, not if the lie is profitable, then it is true. If the lie is profitable, then it is popular. Not necessarily true, but it becomes popular because people will believe en masse things that are false. The reason that communism is popular is because in a capitalist or caste system society, there are losers. There are people who, due to a lack of effort, lack of ability, or circumstances inside or outside their control, fail. And they end up on the bottom. They are the losers of society. And they don't want to be losers. They want to be winners. But rather than build themselves up, it is easier to just tear others down. And have others tear them down for you. And that is why communism is popular. Not because it is right, but because there's a shit ton of losers out there who want everyone else to suck just as much as them. But let's see his side of this. Let's see if he can find the truth in communism.
I think Karl Marx was correct in his analysis of capitalism, which is that capitalism creates class disparities. He's absolutely right about that.
Yeah, but at the same time, no. Capitalism does not create class disparity. It just formalizes the disparity that naturally occurs between people of differing levels of skill. In a pure capitalist society, you are going to be rewarded based on what you can provide. Some people can provide more than other people. And those people are going to have more than other people. Therefore, there's going to be a disparity. And that's going to piss the people who aren't at the top off. But that's not created by capitalism. That's created by reality, life, nature.
His methodology of getting rid of the problem is not correct, but the flaw that is pointed out there is extremely correct, which is why communism has gotten a big following. Not only did he correctly perceive the class struggle, but the class struggle is so real, it's so ingrained in human society that people will viscerally react to it. And that visceral reaction is something I've already mentioned in other videos before, is that when people get a class disparity, men don't get chosen by women. Women will far more pick the most dominant males and leave the undominant males or leave the weaker ones by the wayside. Whereas if you flip it around, men rate women on a scale of 1 to 10, and that is either you are attractive or you're not. And so men will be perfectly fine dating any woman who meets their standards. So if my standard is a 7, any woman who is a 7 or more, I'm going to date her. And that's how all men work. And so if every woman was physically attracted to be a 7 or higher, every woman would get married. But it's not like that it's not like on the opposite side, because women are always going to choose the most competitive person. So they're always going to choose the top 20% of men. And certainly if you make the class disparity so large that the 80% of men cannot compete, well, then they get left behind.
So what you do is you create a society that says, hey, each woman can only be with one man. Therefore, you're going to increase the percentage of men that can have a woman, because any man that has a woman is going to be locked down. That's why you would have monogamy in marriage. That's why you have these kinds of systems in place, to maximize the amount of men that have an investment in the country and the society. Yes, like, harems are a natural state for humans. Monogamy, unfortunately, it is not. However, if you want to create a society that doesn't have a whole bunch of angry men in it, well, then you have to create that kind of system. And here's the thing. With class disparity, sure, the woman may want that top man, but if you deny her access to those top men, because there are already women higher up than her that have locked that man down, then she will deal with the best she has access to. And that can happen in, shock of all shocker, a capitalist society. But let's continue and see if maybe he's going to get to a point that isn't easily torn apart.
So until we address the problem that Karl Marx pointed out, we don't get the problem solved. And now, certainly, I mentioned before, and I think a lot of other MGTOW channels have mentioned this before, because it's now the obvious solution, is that we need to take care of these guys who are not being chosen. And the way we take care of them is by giving them artificial sex dolls, by giving them porn, by giving them AI. I'm not really into the AI thing, but I think for some people who are into like the AI programs, like for the cell phone or for the Nintendo DS or stuff like that, that might be a solution as well.
Yeah, no, the thing is, the AI is going to do what the others can't. Like, yes, the sex doll deals with the sexual urges and also creates the vasopressin bond, which makes the men not desire the woman, but it does not solve the reproduction. That's what the artificial womb is for. But for those guys who want the relationship, yeah, you need the AI. Like, if they want to actually talk to someone who pretends to like love and care for and cherish and value them, you need the AI. You're not getting around that. So if you're going to say, yeah, we'll take care of your sexual needs and your kid needs, but not your emotional needs, then you're not really taking care of the problem, Sean, and you're still making them dependent on women who already don't give a shit about men if they don't absolutely have to. So, yeah, so short of glory here, but I couldn't exactly say that I'm the purveyor of AI-generated red pills unless I pointed out the necessity in AI in ultimately freeing men from everything that binds them to women. Let us continue.
Until we take care of these things, until we take care of these problems, we will always be at risk for communism, because all the men who have the power to take the power back, and certainly if you're the top 20% of men, you might be stronger than most people, but you're not stronger than 3 times as many people as you, or not stronger than 4 times as many people as you. So if there's 4 of us for every one of you, well, we're eventually going to outcompete you, even if we're much weaker than you.
No. No, you're not. Because here's the thing. Let's say there's one guy with 3 women, and there are 4 guys who want to take it out. Well, that guy can go, hey, I have 2 more women than I necessarily need, so I'll promise 1 to the first 2 of you to turn on your companions. And now your 4v1 is 3v2, not in your favor. That's how it works. The ones at the top will use their excess resources to hire those slightly below them to keep the people at the absolute bottom from seizing the means of control. So, yeah, no. And besides, when you got 4 guys fighting against one guy to get his 3 women, yeah, you're still gonna have to split 3 women between 4 guys. So it's ultimately going to be self-defeating, and you're just going to cannibalize each other. And meanwhile, you took out a whole bunch of valuable workforce in the process. So, nice try, but yeah, you get a D on the report card for that one.
So until that problem is solved, until we get the artificial birth, until we get probably gene therapy, because there's a certain reason why women go for the top 20% of men, because you don't want bad genes. And so if I can get artificial birth mixed in with gene,
women are not considering logically genetic stuff. They're just going by whatever makes them feel good. They're not doing an assessment program on the viability of genes. They're going with, that guy makes me super horny. I want him to bang me. And even then, they're not going, oh yeah, let's totally bang this guy, but let's not have the kid because the kid would be inconvenient. So no, women are just going on their base emotion. They are not doing the whole logical assessment of quality genes. If they even could assess quality genes, because you can have amazing genes, but if you don't put in the actual effort, they'll never actually express themselves properly. So yeah, nice try. Again, D on the report card.
Therapy, so I can make sure my child is better than I was or has better genetics than I do, and I get a sex robot, and I get maybe a little AI with that sex robot. We're not going to have to worry about the mass killings of communism anymore when that problem is solved. So I think we should certainly be...
No, you're always going to have to worry about the mass bits of communism, because guess what? This gene therapy, these artificial wombs, all these extra things that you're promising, who's going to have the most access to them? It's not going to be the people who would turn to communism. The losers, the bottom rung of society, the hobos living out in tents in the woods. No, it's going to be the top percentage of men. Those are the ones who are going to have the access. So they're the ones who are going to have the best shit. And the people at the bottom are going to be all upset because, we don't have as good artificial wombs. We don't have as good sex dolls. We don't have as good gene therapy. We need to redistribute the wealth. And communism does not end. I don't know whether you just can't see this because you're an idiot, or whether you refuse to see this because it defeats your entire argument and point of this video.
Working in that direction. And the last thing I have to say about this is that a lot of times when people who are your opponents, they will use certain tactics, much like when I've been playing Smash Brothers, and I've played people who are much better than me at the game, and I've learned how to do different tactics based on what they're doing. It's like, oh, this person keeps doing that over and over again, and I keep getting hit by it. Why don't I just do the same thing? And there's been a lot of situations where I've read tactics of different people who I disagree with. Like I read Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, and that was a pretty big one. And I read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Those 2 books had a pretty heavy influence on how I think. Not because I agree with the ideas that were posed. Certainly I do not agree with Hitler's idea of mass killing of Jews. By the way, I was somebody had posted in a vegan group I'm a part of. Actually, I don't know. It's not a vegan group I'm a part of, because I'm not a part of any vegan groups. It's a vegan Facebook page I liked a long time ago. But
oh, right. I forgot the whole vegan thing. Yeah. Also, a vegan for a while until the vegans got too extreme for him and then he decided to back off. But he's still going to talk about how he's a vegan. Yeah. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm a martial artist and I'm a vegan. It's like, yeah, no wonder you get your ass kicked. Like, not only does being a vegan make your body weak, it makes your mind weak as well. So I guess that's why you're sticking to Smash Bros. And you're probably getting your ass kicked on the regular there too. How many times do I stop this? And it's only 12 minutes in, and we're going at 1.5 times speed here, people.
Posted this picture of this girl named Greta Thunberg, who is a fantastic speaker, especially for someone who's only 15 or 16. The problem is that her ideas are not even there. All she does is just character attack everybody and say, well, you guys are the problem and you guys should fix it and blah, 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 blah. But there's no actual facts, reason, and evidence behind her arguments for global warming. And Hitler was much the same way. He was a very good speaker, but had said a lot of really terrible things, which means the lesson...
What really terrible things? Because what it sounds like is you're just providing character assassination without any actual facts or evidence to back it up. Again, like you can say, oh yeah, I read Mein Kampf. Hitler said bad things. What are those bad things? Well, I'm not going to say those bad things. Why? Probably because you might not be able to even find the very things that you're saying are there. Because if there were bad things, you'd probably be able to start pulling out quotes to work with. Again, like he is literally the very thing that he criticizes other people for being. Oh yeah, yeah. And Greta and fantastic speaker is like, look, if you've been coached for your life by your parents to be a talking head and a political puppet, you'd better be a good bloody speaker.
That should be learned, that has not been learned by a lot of people, is that we can't rely on people who are just good speakers. We have to rely on what they are actually saying and not just their charisma, a lesson that is entirely lost on the left right now.
And apparently, the irony is entirely lost on Sean.
But getting back to the point, one of the big things I learned from Hitler is basically an understanding of the audience. What Hitler would do is he would look around and look for the person who understood him the least, the person who wasn't getting it. And he would change his speech based on how that person responded. So who's the least intelligent person in the room, and how can I make them understand what I'm saying? And if I can make them understand what I'm saying, I can make everybody understand what I'm saying. And that is a very fantastic way to speak. In fact, it's almost the opposite of what the left is doing now, because Hitler was a socialist, so he's on the left, is a lot of times what they'll do is they'll sit there and
Yeah, but he was a nationalist, which put him on the right. So which is it? Was he on the left because he was a socialist? Was he on the right because he was a nationalist? Or because he was on both sides, was he a centrist?
college universities, and they'll make up all these big words that's like, I don't know, intersectional feminism or systemic racism or whatever, and things like that. That are there's words that are bigger than that, but they'll sit there and use their own terminology and their own dialect, and nobody will have any idea what they're saying. And they'll say, "Well, I thought of all these big words, so I'm smarter than you. If you don't understand me, it's because you're an idiot." There's no faster way to turn people away from your message than doing things like that. And so the best way to communicate to people is to communicate to the lowest common denominator. Who is the person who understands you least? How can I make them get what I'm saying? And then you will very well get the people who are more.
Isn't the left also the group of people that as soon as there's a person with a darker skin tone in the audience, they alter their speech as though they are talking to someone far less intelligent than them? Pretty sure that was a thing at least a couple years back that started to get out, but yeah, again, I'm willing to bet that that slipped by Sean as well.
Intelligent a lot easier. And certainly, I really highly appreciate when speakers do this when I'm listening to them because I can more easily pay attention. Second thing I learned from listening to people who disagree with me is from Solinsky. And one of the things that Solinsky said was really good is that if you're going to communicate to an audience, if you're going to communicate to someone who doesn't understand you, you try to go inside of their own experience. And the way you do that is by using metaphor. I'm going to teach you something based off something you already know. And so if I'm talking to a group of auto mechanics and I want to say something political, I'm going to say, hey, this thing that's political is just like that thing that you do with a car. In fact, I've already done this so far in this conversation right now, is that I've talked.
Yeah, but did you really need to go to Solinsky for that kind of stuff? Like, seriously, like, if I was telling you guys, oh, hey, who's your number one inspiration for how to communicate with other people? And I went, oh, I learned a lot from Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Because guess what? Like, I have understood that if you want to communicate with someone, you need to go into their own experiences and speak to them in a way that they can relate to and use metaphors to create relatable scenarios or situations. I do that all the bloody time when I'm trying to talk to somebody. And I will often ask them, hey, do you understand this? Are you familiar with this? To try to get an idea for whatever their frames of understanding are that we might have in common, so I can then use it to address them. I have not read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. So I'm pretty sure that it wasn't an idea he came up with. It's just the source that Sean here decided, yeah, this is who my source is going to be. You don't need to listen to people who you disagree with to get good ideas. You can listen to people who agree with you because a good idea is a good idea. It doesn't have to come from someone who's also going to poison your brain with a bunch of bullshit.
About for people who played video games before, I talked about Super Smash Bros. I talked about fighting games. So if you played a fighting game, you can now understand what I'm talking about when it's in a way that's important to understand your opponents. Because if you don't understand your opponents in the fighting game, you will lose. So that's a really effective tactic. Now, there's a flip side of that on the Solinsky book that I don't agree with. I think is stupid. Well, it's not stupid because it works. But if you want to defeat somebody in debate, all you have to do, and this is what the left does, this is why the left uses tons of big words, is if you want to defeat somebody in a debate, you go always within your audience's own experience. So you're always using metaphors, you're always trying to relate your points back to something your audience knows. And when you're debating somebody, you make sure you find some random piece of shit and you go based off of that, based off what they don't know. So here's a bunch of things that you don't know, and I'm going to berate you for not knowing those things. And if you remember back to the political elections of 2016, Gary Johnson lost because he didn't know about some... God, I don't even know what the fuck he didn't know. It was something like, there was something in the Middle East or something like that that was war, and he didn't know about some military conquest or something like that, and they destroyed him on that point. So clearly this tactic works. I just think it's kind of immoral because you can do it forever. There's an infinite amount of things to know, so the tactic always works, and it doesn't really solve the problem. It doesn't really, it's a way of distracting you from the issue. So that's my argument for listening to your opponents. There's a couple of different ways you can benefit from doing that. One, you can have a complete change of mind, like I had on the Michael Jackson pedophile situation, where there's a lot of stuff I didn't know about it, and turns out I may have been wrong about my previous thoughts, which is fine. Certainly, I want to, if I can find out a better way, I want to be wrong because, well, life is really hard, and certainly you can suffer or you can suffer less, and I would rather suffer less. And the way you suffer less is by admitting fault, admitting defeat, and changing your ideals based on that defeat. Second, you can certainly get a new perspective.
Or, you know, you can do what Sean does nowadays and just ignore critics, deride critics without doing any research on them, make videos criticizing critics despite being an outright hypocrite on such things, and outright erase your past in order to cover up the fact that you did shit that is no longer agreed with by your current brand. So, you know, maybe again, President Sean, perhaps you should take the advice from your past self, because the ideals of your past self are certainly far better than the person that you actually turned out to be a couple years later.
Or maybe it's a really popular opinion that identifies a problem that exists that you're not solving. Now, the opinion might not be the correct way to solve the problem, but the problem still exists. Like with communism, the problem is the class disparity or discrepancies that some people get really, really rich in capitalism and everybody else is kind of left to the wayside. That is a problem that needs to be solved. Now, I don't think it's solved with communism. I think it's solved with more capitalism, but capitalism in the right technological directions. And porn is kind of a basic technological...
Okay. What you need to do, if you're going to solve the problem of capitalism, is not to hand out more tech. It's to minimize the amount of people who are unsatisfied with their lot in life. Because, guess what? Like, yeah, there's always going to be people who want to tear down the people at the top. But most people are okay with being at any position on the totem pole so long as they have their basic needs met. Can they reliably put food on the table? Can they have a family? Do they have at least a decent amount of respect for what they do? They don't have to be worshipped for it, but at the very least, the contributions that they make need to be respected. Like the phrase, it ain't much, but it's honest work. People have been satisfied not being at the top for a long time. You can always satisfy those kinds of people, but you need to satisfy their, like, you need to satisfy like all their physical needs. So you need to, again, put food on the table, and they need to be capable of providing for a family. And if you're not going to give them that, if you're going to encourage a society that gives women the freedom to all chase the top men, and you're going to disenfranchise the bottom 70, 80, 90, 95% of men, then yeah, you have a very unstable society. And that's why, like, a society that is pure capitalism usually isn't particularly stable, because there's a lot of conflict, and why caste systems and hierarchical systems tend to be pretty important. Because those systems mean that, yeah, if you can't date outside your caste, it doesn't matter how hot or attractive you are, you're not going to date outside of your caste. So if you are the peasant caste, you could be the hottest peasant girl in the entire country. Doesn't matter. You are still limited to peasants. And that works, because then even a peasant can get a hot girl. So, let's wrap this one up, and then I'm going to get a fresh thing of ice.
Solution to this problem, which will become more numerous in the future. We're going to get a lot more options in the future, especially as we start getting like artificial birth and sex dolls and stuff like that, and gene therapy. This problem, the problem of communism will be completely solved once we get those things. And then, of course, last, you can certainly learn new tactics by watching what your opponents do, because hey, that tactic that this person used worked really, really well. Why don't I just copy it?
How about I learn from the people who are actually successful, regardless of whether or not it works? Because if the people who disagree with me have a history of failure, like communism does, then perhaps listening to them is not really what I should do, and I should instead look at the people who have found great and consistent success. Because they probably have the same ideas and other ideas that are far more useful.
So there's an extreme amount of benefit you get from listening to the other side. And I will leave it at that. So if you like this video, please hit the like button.
No, that's the thing, Matria. Peasant would not end up a concubine to the greater. It entirely depends on the caste system. But in a strict caste system, a royal would not be permitted to even take a beautiful peasant girl as a concubine. Like, that would be the strictest form of the caste system. Maybe one level up or down would be viable, but they would still limit the dating options entirely based on the caste. I'd have to double check the details there. If someone actually knows a little bit more about the strictest caste systems that we've had in human history, please let me know. I'd actually be more curious to learn about them. But yeah, this video is about to wrap up. And again, this video, I believe it's been deleted. Maybe it's somewhere on his channel. I actually haven't dug through to find out. But I'm certain that it's something that he no longer stands by. So if you have any comments on his video or comments on the comments that I've made on his video, yeah, comment down below. And see you in the next one. All right. Okay, so gonna take 5 seconds. I'm just gonna hit the little intermission button here. Get some fresh ice. So, everyone restock your drinks, your snacks, whatever you've been going for. I've got 2 more videos queued up for this particular stream. And we should be able to get through them in fairly decent time, I think. Yeah, be right back, guys. And we are back. So, let's pop forward a little bit to the next one.
My last.
Oh, why you don't let women run society? Well, I mean, we're almost certainly in agreement on this. So there might not be very much to fight with him on here, but maybe we'll still be able to roast his reasons why. Or, maybe it'll just be that he's repeating obvious stuff. Let's just hit the record button and jump right into it without too much further ado. All right, so digging into the history of Sean of Think Before You Sleep, episode 35, why you don't let women run society.
My last video was on reading your enemies and looking at people who disagree with you and watching what their arguments say. And I mentioned that I'm reading a book called A People's History of the United States, which is a book I've had for about 10 years, that was recommended to by a very communist-like professor that I had in college. And of course, it was fine with me then because I was fairly into communism at that point, like a lot of college students are because they believe the lie. And so I've been reading this book, and I'm 30 pages in, and already, this is like a 700-page book, by the way, it's huge. And already, in the very first couple chapters, actually in the very first chapter, I'm on chapter 2 right now, but in the very first chapter, there's a gold mine. Now, the first chapter is about Columbus and how Columbus treated the South Americans and the Indians and stuff like that. You may already know how this goes. But one of the things I want to say about the way he presents the Indians is he presents the Indians as the noble savage. These people are just better than the people that are in the West. And
yeah, no doubt that they present them as better. But before I dive into going a little bit harder, let's see what he's got. I do at least have to stop this once every minute. Otherwise, I'm basically just doing mild facial reactions to whatever he says. And that's not particularly entertaining.
What he says is that they're better because they have a more egalitarian society. Now, in my version of the book, he says that these societies are egalitarian, or more egalitarian, on page 18. And his first example on page 20, he talks about how they treat women and how women are basically the leaders. And it says women are important, they're respected. If you're going to marry into a family, you go down the women's lineage as opposed to the man's lineage. It says this, and I quote, "The women attended clan meetings, stood behind the circle of men who spoke and voted, and removed the men from office if they strayed too far from the wishes of the women." So this is...
Yeah, that sounds less egalitarian and more matriarchal. But let's see how far he's going here, because there's a couple other details which, hey, maybe he'll actually bring up.
A female-controlled society, which is not an egalitarian society. This is a matriarchy. An egalitarian society is when men and women are both equal, or maybe hopefully they're equal in respects to...
Oh, hey, he actually called it out for being a matriarchy. Okay, let's keep going. All right, maybe this will be a very short video because we'll actually not have that much to tear apart.
That they have their own certain roles, as men and women are not equal in reality. Thus, they should not be treated equally in practice. But Howard Zinn goes on about how progressive this society was and how great the noble savage is because they didn't have any notion of private property. And so while they were less...
No notion of private property. I'm pretty sure that maybe they didn't have private personal property, but they definitely had territorial boundaries. So, that's to me that's just Okay, so if a country does not allow private property, but it still defends its borders and enforces them, does it not count as private property? Okay, well let's just keep going here. Let's just keep going. See where he's going with this.
Technologically advanced, they were more culturally advanced, and this is the terminology that was used in a lot of my classes that wanted to promote the ideas of communism. Like I remember, I took a class called Chicano Studies 300 or something like that. Now, when you're in college, if you don't know this, and you go and get it.
Oh yeah. No, by the way, not technologically advanced. 10,000 years on the North American continent, whereas the European societies had made it through the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, had manufactured ships that could cross the ocean I believe that they had, at the very least, steel by this point, if not more advanced steel like Damascus steel. And we're on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution. And in that same time period, the population of, at the very least, North America was still in the Stone Age. So, yeah, saying like not as much technological advancement, like literally 10,000 years and they didn't get out of the Stone Age.
Degree, you have lower division GE, which is what you'll take in like community college if you go there, and that's like your 100 and 200 courses that are GE. But what I did not know is that when I went to college, when I went to a state school after I went to a community school, is that you have this bullshit called upper division GE. Yeah, upper division GE, which I was like, oh man, I just finished all my GE. This is great. I got my little GE cert, and I get to a better college, and you have to do the same shit. And so one of the bullshit classes I took was called Chicano Studies 300 or something like that. And the professor was completely a socialist. He had this whole video where he promoted Hugo Chavez, the previous leader of Venezuela, and well, you might know where this is going. It had like Hugo Chavez playing soccer. He was a friend of the kids. He had all these great things about him. And I can't believe this guy slept by promoting this propaganda. Because when you actually look at Hugo Chavez, you see the totality of it. There's videos of him out there going on his own TV. He had his own TV channel. And he said, I don't like this company over here. I'm going to fire all the executives and I'm going to replace them with my people. This company, by the way, had built themselves from the ground. And if you've ever built a business or if you ever did try to build a business, holy shit, it is hard. Even just making a YouTube channel, which is vastly easier than that, is still difficult. And so these people have been massively successful. And he's like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You guys are all out. Guess what happened in Venezuela? This great, fantastic country that's more progressive than America. It's doing so well. It's got this great leader. Well, you know, people are eating pigeons and drinking gasoline, eating rats, and killing dogs and cats and stuff like that just to survive because they can't eat. Or police are publicly beating people out in daylight. Fantastic country. And so they would use this terminology where they're not as technologically advanced; they're more culturally advanced.
Yeah, I think the point that he's going to be getting to in a second is that cultural advancement is just translation for more socialist, which, let's be honest here, this is the whole like, oh, you know, we need to make them sound as equals. So even though they've been a complete and outright failure in terms of technology, we need to give them something else to compensate for it. Kind of like how they say, oh, well, women might not be as intellectually smart as men, but they're more emotionally intelligent. They're better at multitasking because, you know, they can't focus on something for any decent length of time. So we say, oh, yeah, they're better at multitasking, whereas men are better at monotasking. Like, yet, no. Like, multitasking is just being shitty at multiple things at once. So, yeah. And again, this is supposed to be a video on why you shouldn't let women run society, and he's been waffling about communism for 4.5 minutes. So I'm sure, as usual, he's going to eventually get to the point, but it's probably going to take about half the video before he gets there.
When reality is that the only way to be technologically advanced is to have an advanced culture. You need to have people you have to have people working together and communicating and doing all this interplay in order for this stuff to be invented, because no one person can invent tons of shit. You know, it's going to be one person invents a lot of stuff, but you're going to need communication from other people, and you don't get that communication unless your philosophical principles are advanced. And so they insist that the Indians are more advanced than the Aborigines are.
Yeah, you know what also helps with communication? Having a writing system so that you can record things for posterity and easier communication rather than relying on 100% oral traditions. I mean, you wonder why all the native history is so lost and fragmented. It's like, if your history wasn't written down by white people, you would lose significantly more of it. Because everything that you passed on was passed on by someone who had to repeat it in a endless game of telephone rather than writing it down. So, yeah, like, more culturally advanced doesn't have a writing system. Bullshit.
Are more advanced, that the Aztecs are more advanced, despite the fact that the Aztecs and the Mayans were murdering each other and committing human sacrifice and shit like that. And one of the things they said is they had no notion of private property. Everybody had each to his need. They had no poorhouses. And the reason...
Yeah, that's because the poorhouse was called the forest where you got eaten by the local wildlife. There was no... Having no poorhouses doesn't mean that there was nobody poor. It just meant that anyone who was poor was sent off to fend for themselves and probably died.
They had no poorhouses is because of the Pareto distribution. is that communism does work on very, very small scales when everybody knows each other. Communism does not work when it's a mask that's covering the face of someone you don't know. Because when you have small groups of people, the Pareto distribution doesn't affect you as much. So if I have a group of 10 people, and by the way, the Price's law actually is the Pareto distribution.
You want to give an example of a communist system? The nuclear family, or just a family in general. Why? Well, because, ideally there is one breadwinner who provides for literally everybody else in the family. Like, that's a redistribution of wealth if I ever heard it. But, maybe if you get to a small tribe, everybody is like at the very least third or fourth cousins at that point. So it's just one big family. So it might work in that sense when essentially everybody is relatives to one another. But yeah, you get big enough, then communism doesn't quite work so well. But let's just keep going here.
The 80-20 rule, if you don't know what that is, 80% of the plants, 20% of the plants produce 80% of the seeds. Basically, what happens is that most of the productive work is done by a very, very small amount of people, and that's seconded by DeSola Price, who had Price's law, which is a law of business. Whereas if you're going to have whatever number of employees, let's say you have 10, the square root of that number will produce half the wealth of that company. Now, if you've got a very small tribe of, let's say, 10 people, well, that's 3 people produce half the wealth. Really not that much. So it's like, well, you've got 7 of the people who aren't producing as much, but they're not. It's not like the people at the bottom or the people at the top are producing like 100 times more than the next guy. It's, maybe it's like twice as much or 3 times as much. When you get bigger,
if you've got a tribe of 10 people, you could break that down into 3 families. Like, you could probably break a tribe of 10 people down into 2 families: a husband, a wife, and a couple kids. So if you have a husband, a wife, and 3 kids, and a husband, a wife, and 2 kids, well, the husbands are going to be the ones providing all the shit. So right there, that is 20% of the population providing for the rest of the 80%. Not particularly hard. It's not like you have a population of 10 grown-ass men and only 2 of them are providing for the other 8. That system falls right the fuck apart real fast.
Bigger numbers. Let's say you get a group of 10,000. Now only 100 people, if my math is correct, 100 people are producing half the work. That means 9,900 people are not as efficient as the top 100 people.
But that's the thing. If you had a system where you had 10,000 people, let's say 10,000 people, and it was a husband, a wife, and an average of 8 kids, then yes, you would have a society where 10% is providing for 90%. And that works just fine. It's all about the distribution. Like, in societies where you have a husband, a wife, and like freaking 6 or 7 kids, or even 5 kids, you have the minority producing for the majority. But that's not communism. Communism redistributes the wealth of the people who provide the most and the least. So in that case, yeah, you have the people who produce the most nowadays, they tend to have the smallest families. So now you have men who probably on their own, without interference, would probably be able to provide for 5 kids of their own. Now they're providing for maybe 1 kid of their own and 4 kids that are not theirs. Yeah, that's where things would break down quite a bit. But I'm going on a tangent here. Let's just keep going.
And then as you get groups of millions, that number goes even further and further down. So it's basically like some people are producing pretty much everything, and then a lot of people are producing pretty much nothing, or most people are producing pretty much nothing. This is why communism does not work in bigger societies, and it works in smaller societies. Who cares if it's private property, if all our property, or if there's no private property, if we would just have TVs and tents and shit like that? Because the richest guy in the tribe is not that much more rich than the person next to them. So it doesn't really matter if you share a lot. But what it does matter is if I have a mansion and you have a shack out in the middle of nowhere, or you have a shack in the middle of a ghetto, my property is not in at all equivalent to your shack in the ghetto. So of course I'm going to be a little bit reserved because I had to work my ass off before this mansion, while you just put a couple cardboard boxes together and that's your house. So of course they're going to have no notions of private property, because in that case they might have to, because each person knows each other so well. But here's the fate of this society, and this is ironic to me because he mentions all the great things about them after he explained what I'm about to say. Now, of course, he's going to say they're all, like I've said, they're all egalitarian. They're better culturally, socially. They've got better vocabulary. They've got better arts. I disagree. This went on in the 1400s or so, and in the 1400s we had Michelangelo like painting on a contraption allowed him to paint upside down on the ceiling of a chapel. I don't see your paper sculpture, not paper, your corn and straw sculpture, or whatever it is not going to be equal to that. I don't think so. But guess what happens? Despite all the artistic advancements, all the egalitarianism, all the equal rights for women and bullshit like that, because things weren't equal for men, so that's not really egalitarian. Before he mentioned this stuff, he talks about how Columbus came along and with a handful of guys murdered all of them. They had spears made out of like sticks and stuff like that. Well, Columbus had guns and knives and horses and all this fantastic shit, and they just annihilated them. So much for egalitarianism. And this is not a moral judgment on what happened here, because a moral argument has no basis here. Certainly, I don't agree with what the Spaniards did, but they still did it. And because they still did it, this is something that we constantly have to worry about.
This is the whole bonobo chimp argument. Like, there are people there who will look at bonobo society and go, this is ideal. This is how it should be. We can all get along if we just follow the bonobos. Like, yeah, as soon as a chimpanzee invents a boat, the bonobos are fucked. And probably not even literally, probably just metaphorically. Literally, they will be eaten. The native tribes of North America could only survive as they did because the ocean was in between them and the Europeans. As soon as that barrier was crossed, they were absolutely screwed. And they would have been screwed centuries earlier had, there not been a massive fuck-off ocean in between them.
Is that if we're not progressing fast enough, our technology, our birth rates, our philosophical values, the people who are progressing faster than us can very well take us out. And that is one of the biggest stories behind history, is that nation A doesn't work as fast as nation B. Nation B goes and conquers nation A and subjects to torture, slavery, and murder and death and stuff like that. And one of the biggest factors that puts a stop on progress is women's rights. There's been no bigger cause of lowering birth rates than women's rights and the women's rights movement. I mean, think of it this way. The family has been destroyed by women's rights. It could go as far as the single motherhood crisis. It could go as far as daycare. I was in daycare. I fucking hated it. And a lot of people I've known hated daycare. And daycare oftentimes is run by the worst people to be around children. Often by people who are jealous that they don't have their own children, which is why they're running to daycare. And what about home-cooked meals? They say kids are getting fatter because, kids are eating tons of processed crap because mom doesn't know how to cook anymore, or she doesn't have time to cook because she's busy going to work because she didn't marry the right guy, or she married some loser, had kids with some loser, and now she's got to take care of the kid herself. Women's rights causes feminist snowplowing, where that big thing in that, was it Sweden or something like that, where they decided that, certain roads that were used by men were all the roads that were snowplowed, and none of the women's roads got to be snowplowed. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this more fair, and this year we're going to plow the women's roads to all the shopping malls and all the bullshit that they were doing when they were not working, and all the male roads were not going to be snowplowed. Guess what happened with that? Turns out all the male roads were all the productive places that needed to be snowplowed, and shit didn't get done. It was a huge detriment to their society by doing that.
Yeah, like, if you don't plow the roads that men use, how are you going to stockpile the malls that women use? Like, seriously, it's a bloody stupid decision if you want your economy and society to thrive. Great decision if you want it to collapse. Absolutely brilliant decision if you're trying to destroy your society. But, yeah, maybe don't make it quite so obvious. But, hey, who's going to think that the government is malicious when you can just say that they're stupid?
Yeah. Women's rights causes things like false rape accusations. They cause things like no-fault divorce. I mean, how much money was wasted on that Kavanaugh hearing? A completely fallacious case where she was obviously lying, and they spent shitloads of money investigating. What about things like Obamacare and welfare and free housing and free maternity care? These are all things that are made in female-run societies. These are all things that will be our downfall and all things that we have to get rid of. Otherwise, we very well could be taken out by a different conqueror. And certainly there are plenty of them out there that could take over America if America gets weak enough. Certainly at this point, Muslims are doing a pretty good job of taking over Europe. And here's that same feminist line you hear all the time. Well, we've never had a society that's run by women. It's our turn. It's time for men to step aside. By the way, how arrogant is that? Is you have this society that was built by men, and you say, well, it's our turn to take it over. You built it, thanks. We're going to take it from here. Well, no. You guys didn't build it. You guys have no idea how it works. And for the most part, you don't care if you fuck it up because you spent no time investing into all the work it took to build a society. But we've had female-run societies. We have the example from the people's history of the United States. This is why you read other people. You read people you disagree with because they will say stupid shit like this. And a lot of times their own followers have not even read the material. You had your female-run society. Your female-run society were the Indians. And where are they? They were all gone and enslaved. And so this is why you cannot let women run society. This is what happens when women run society. And they're running it right now. And they're running it straight into the ground. And so we know what needs to be done. We need to take everything that was gained or progressed, in air quotes, by feminism and roll it all back. And
No, you need to let it burn. Because If you roll it all back, then you're going to get a whole bunch of men that haven't suffered enough who are going to go, maybe we should give it back to them. Maybe we were too cruel, too oppressive to them. No. You need to carve the pain of a female-run society into the male psyche so that it lasts at least a couple generations. You need to make the suffering go to such an extreme extent that any man who proposes a female-run society will be beaten to death in the street with spoons. That's what you need. If you roll this back, sure, you might save a bunch of lives in the short term, may prevent some of the consequences, but all you're doing is kicking the can down the road. That's why I'm 100% ready for this stuff to just go a step further. Just keep building the fire. Keep the suffering going, because pain is the only way that simps are going to learn.
That's not to say a lot of people are saying, well, let's just go find a good woman. Let's go find a woman to stay at home and raise the kids. And
thanks for the books. I really appreciate it, and it saved me a ton of me.
Hey, Condor. Glad it was able to help out. Yeah, I direct people to Z Library. If you're interested, hit me up on Discord. But let's wrap this video up here.
all the womanly things that they used to do. It's too late for that. They did that because they were liable for certain things. If you cheated on your husband back in the 50s or the 40s, you would be fucked. There was no severance pay. There was no alimony and child support. You lost the kids. You were done. These days, that's not the case. If she cheats on you, she can own you and ruin your life. So this is not this. That's not the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is to take away all the. And by the way, when I say women's rights, women already had rights. Rights were gender neutral when they were written in the Constitution. Women's rights is just some stupid buzzword PR term that they use to get women's privileges or to find ways to make women superior to men in law. And they've done a very, very good job at that. So it's time to do a very, very good job at it and start rolling this shit back. And I guess the first step is to get pissed off about it, is to find enough people who are pissed off about it to start saying no. But I will leave it at that. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, just try that. Just try getting pissed off and saying no, and then the men with guns tell you, you say yes now, or you die. Because that's the thing. Women are not the ones enforcing. If it was just a matter of women enforcing these things, there'd be no problem. But that's not how it is. Men are the ones enforcing all of this behavior by women. So, really, it doesn't matter what women say without the force of men to back it up.
Like the video, please hit the like button. If you are new, subscribe, and comment down below if you have anything to add. And I will see you in the next one.
I wonder if he would still say take women's rights away. I wonder if he would say we need to roll back women's rights. I wonder if he would really, really do that in his current iteration, because I can almost guarantee you this video is no longer on his channel. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Hey, we got one more here?
One letter.
Yeah, so this will be the last one here, but yeah, let's take a look at chat, because we are definitely ahead of schedule, and I budgeted out 3 hours and we're only an hour and a half in. We're getting through these in pretty fast speed. Let's see. Yeah, Frost, exactly. He's probably not so much about taking women's quote-unquote rights away now that he's actually getting some action. But, this was even before he went hardcore and put MGTOW in the title of basically every single video. Let's see. Yeah, oh yeah, August Line, he did actually go ahead and defend universal suffrage? Yeah, that sounds about right. He used the hardcore MGTOW stuff in order to get popular on YouTube, and then, the instant it wasn't working out for him, he decided to well, essentially turncoat and decide, you know what, let's sell out, let's throw my prior audience under the bus, and let's you just basically deny everything in the past, erase all evidence that I said it, and instead become, an intellectual, yes, a feminist, but a less extreme feminist, in the vein of the Lotus Eaters and whatnot. Yeah, precisely, Frost. Like, Sandman built up Think Before You Sleep, and now Think Before You Sleep threw him under the bus. So, yeah. But, hey, I guess it's kind of a lesson. Like, if someone tells you that they've read things like Rules for Radicals and the Communist Manifesto, maybe don't trust them. Because, like, quite honestly, what the heck are you supposed to do with that? Like, have I read it? No. Am I gonna read it? Am I gonna get anything of value out of it? Do I really want to learn those kinds of lessons? I don't know. Just seems a little off to me. But who knows? Maybe eventually I'll do it. Although Sotanar sent out this list of very interesting books that are probably far more volatile than anything Rules for Radicals could put out. So, if I'm going to read some sort of contraband taboo stuff, why not read some of the more extreme shit? Sandman gave him the idea to script his videos because he rambled too much. Yeah, that's probably the number one criticism that I've been having here, is that he fucking rambles about bullshit for ages. And heck, now it's gotten to the point where a lot of my video scripts are actually AI generated and AI voice produced. It's brilliant. But this is mostly me rambling. Honestly, much as I'd like to go for the full 3 hours, with the rate that I'm consuming alcohol here, I'm probably not going to make it to 3 hours. So, yeah, we'll just do this last one. Okay, hate crimes are stupid. Yeah, we'll do this one. Yeah, we'll do this one because that's what I had queued up for here. And then, if anyone's got something that they want me to talk about in chat, we'll just kind of do some free chatting for a little while. And then we'll wrap it up. So, just refill the rum and coke here. Not quite as hardcore as Chaz. I don't have Everclear. But, for reference, we're drinking Captain Morgan Bold Spice rum. So this is 50% alcohol. So, it's half Everclear. Random Gen Z bastard. Tend to get multiple books on a subject that I'm vaguely interested in for the sake of accuracy. Yeah, no, I can absolutely see that, and yeah, I think that'd be a good idea because you want to see where the consistencies are and where there's inconsistencies between, well, the various authors. Alcohol poisoning ghost. I mean, heck, so long as I'm not hungover ghost first thing in the morning, like, I still gotta work, guys. Even a ghost needs to be able to pay his ectoplasm bills. Oh, Awesome Boss. Hey, look, Awesome Boss. There is a trick to feeling energized when you are a vegan. And it comes in the form of a white powder that you consume through your nose. Oh. What do I think of Justin Trudeau praising his latest? Oh. Trudeau's and the speaker's latest big gaffe. It's like, you know what? I just hope that it sticks around a little more thoroughly than the whole blackface thing. I think it's gonna get thrown under the bus, but quite frankly, I just have to laugh at all this stuff in Parliament because I have no faith in the system to actually do anything proper about it. I'm pretty sure this shit will eventually slide off him like fucking Teflon. Like you say that shit slides off Donald Trump is like, nah. Shit slides off Trudeau. Like, it is beyond amazing how much Trudeau is able to get away with that literally anyone else in any other political party would get downright crucified for. Yeah, awesome boss. I literally got into an argument with a vegan many years ago trying to point out the whole canines thing, and they tried to say like, oh yeah, cavemen like weren't capable of catching other animals because this one professor with a fucking PowerPoint presentation showed it. So our stomachs aren't meant to handle this kind of stuff. It was beyond stupid, and I later got a "you were right" message, but legit, if you put anyone behind a desk and give them a PowerPoint presentation, there's stupid people who will believe anything. Hey, awesome. If you want to get energized as a vegan, you kind of got to do the nose candy. Because I don't know how you're supposed to get energized otherwise. But, hit record and do next segment. I do plan on uploading these as standalone segments. Yeah, I got to do a little more than shorts these days. But let us begin. Digging the past of Think Before You Sleep, episode 36. Hate crimes are stupid. So let's get going.
Well, in light of recent events, I've been thinking about hate crime legislation and how, well, utterly nonsense it is. And I think this probably brings up a South Park episode that people are thinking about, which is, by the way, it's season 4, episode 1, according to Google, if you want to look that one up, which the basis of the episode is that all hate crimes are stupid because all crimes are caused by hate. It doesn't really change what happened to the crime. If you attack somebody for being black, you still attack the person, so you should just be tried as someone who attacked.
No, not all crimes are caused by hate. Most crimes are caused by, like, self-interest. Like, you don't necessarily rob somebody because you hate them. You rob them because you want what they have. Hate is not necessarily a factor. Not disagreeing that hate crimes are stupid, but, I mean, it's still a crime. Whatever, not even 30 seconds in. Let's keep going.
The person. Why does that crime deserve special status? And of course, this was in the aftermath of the civil rights movement, which in this case, it was specifically done for minority cases. Like, when was the last time you heard in the media of a black person attacking a white person not being called a hate crime? And go ahead and post a link in the description if you have an article that says that and prove me wrong.
There was actually an incident incredibly recently of a black girl stealing from an Asian guy who was doing a public performance, and not only stealing a handful of cash out of the donation bin, but also smacking and breaking his keyboard. Is that a hate crime? Probably not. Who decides if it's a hate crime? The people at the top. It's almost as though they have a specific idea for what demographic can experience hate crimes and everyone else who just has to deal with lesser crimes.
But this legislation or these ideas are mostly used for protected classes. And by the way, if you are protecting a class, it is not, well, it's not equal at all. It's certainly an example of racism, is that people are fighting for these special statuses so they can get certain benefits and certain privileges, just like when you fight for affirmative action. Now, affirmative action hurts both parties. One, it hurts the party that could have gotten the job or could have gotten that position at college. And plus, certainly as someone who's going to go to a doctor, can I really trust a black doctor? Can I trust a woman doctor? Can I trust all these doctors that may have gotten into school because of their race, despite the fact that they were less qualified than, let's say, an Asian doctor or a white doctor? So looking at this thing statistically, it hurts the people who would have gotten the job if they're qualified, but it hurts the people who did get the job because now the black person I'm talking about could perfectly be qualified to be my doctor, but I don't know. I'm not going to take that risk, especially if my life's on the line, because it may very also well be possible.
Yeah, lucky you being in America where you actually get some choice in who your doctor is. Up here in Canada, you take whoever's fucking available. And you know these days, whoever is a doctor in Canada, Like, they're clearly a sellout to the government, because any doctor that had integrity was fired years ago.
That he was an affirmative action hire, or he was an affirmative action entry into a college, and I'm going to go with the lesser risk of that by going with the Asian or going with the white person who do not get special privilege status because of that. And certainly, it seems like everybody and their grandmother on the left is trying to fight for special hate crime status, and even such as calling a person by the wrong gender is now considered a hate crime, which is ridiculous. And people are, by the way, there was that, if I can find this video, I'll link it in the description with hopefully the timestamp, is that Steven Crowder was having the gender argument, and he was talking to someone who had some made up gender or some shit, and it was a girl, by the way, so he's calling her she and her and stuff like that, and not as a way to spite her, but because of the fact he's been using she and her for women for, as long as he's been alive. And it's really unusual to go to a college campus where this is the only place where this shit exists in large numbers, and to have to change the way you've been speaking for your entire life. And so he mistakenly misgenders her, not intentionally, not as a form of spite, but just as a use of common language, and she absolutely flips her shit. And there's another example of that, of a GameStop employee calling this guy sir, when he's like he looks as...
It's ma'am! God, it's been a long time since that happened.
much of like a woman as a grandfather in a wig. Like, he's clearly not a chick. And so, of course, this GameStop employee is trying to be polite and says, "Sir, can you please calm down?" And he goes, "Sir, excuse me, it's ma'am." And he flips the fuck out for an accident. So imagine, I don't know if this could be already the case or not, if it gets hate crime status to accidentally call someone sir when they want to be called ma'am, or to actually call someone she when they want to be called zer. And, well, look at all the shit that this causes. And so in light of recent events with the Jussie Smollett event, which to me it looks like we haven't gotten enough of these. These are allegations, so we have to be very, very careful, despite the fact that our friend Jussie Smollett does not want to be careful about allegations that had made for other people. I'll put this in the video. There is a tweet of him saying, "I believe Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, and fuck rapists, sexual predators, and the people who protect them," basically saying that, despite the fact that there was no evidence of Kavanaugh raping Christine Blasey Ford, that he's still going to stand with her and believe her without any sort of due process. Because there was no...
Keep in mind, this is coming from the same guy who believed that Michael Jackson did inappropriate things with children without appropriate evidence, and he believed that for a decade before someone finally shoved the evidence in front of his face and forced him to acknowledge that he was being stupid. So, not exactly like you have the moral high ground here, but that's from like 2 episodes ago. Let's keep going.
Due process in that case. But when it's on his side, well, now I want due process. Now I want the law. Now I want all the protections that have been afforded me that I would not give to other people. Well, because I'm consistent on my principles, I'm going to give Jussie Smollett the benefit of the doubt and say, these are just allegations at this point. Let's wait for a full-on prison sentence or full-on conviction before we say this is true. But it's looking heavily like he faked an attack to paint white people as terrible people. So that's, well, there's a couple things that you might benefit from doing this.
John is consistent on his principles. Damn, I think that's the funniest thing you've said in the past 36 episodes. I honestly don't think that hindsight is 20/20. It's probably like, what, 18/20, 10/20? I forget exactly what it is, but like, lower numbers are better for eyesight, I think. I don't actually know the grading system for it, but let's keep going.
And by the way, the way fame works, the way popularity works is that, there's that you work 10 years to become an overnight success. Is that what happens in your life is you spend a lot of time preparing for a certain situation. I might prepare as a musician, I might prepare as a journalist, I might prepare as an actor. And you're going to work on your competence, not because you're going to slowly work your way up, but what's going to happen is that some event in your life is going to be very, very big, and that event will show people that you're the competent person. So if you want to open up a restaurant, what you should do is be a very, very good chef, and then start going to events where there are a lot of people. That way you can attract those people to your business by saying, "Hey, I'm competent. I went to this one really big festival. I may have spent a shitload of money making a booth. I may have not seen as many people as I like, but I did see enough people to help build my restaurant following. So I did see enough people to get maybe 5 or 6 regular customers. If I keep doing that, I'm going to go get business." Whereas if I just kind of sit on my merry way and wait for people to walk into my business, it's going to be a lot less effective than going out and getting stuff. Actually, you probably want more than 5 or 6 regular customers. You probably want like 20 or 30 regular customers from a big event like that. You pay a lot of money for. And that's the way this stuff works. If you look at the Jordan Peterson case, Jordan Peterson had been on YouTube for several years, and all of a sudden, he gets this massive amount of attention because shit happened. He was someone who was very, very competent for a very long time, and the certain event made him well known, and people said, "Hey, this guy is not only well known for this event, he's also super competent. And the things he's saying is really good." And this actually happened twice to Jordan Peterson. So one, it happened back in 2016 when a bunch of students mobbed him for the Bill C-16 thing, and then the second one happened. That the second wave might have even been bigger than the first wave because he was already like, the original movie, the sequel comes out, and the sequel is better than the original. Is when he released his book, he went on Kathy Newman, and Kathy Newman just sat there and strawmanned the whole time. And he got not just that, but he got one fantastic line where he's like, she says, "Well, what gives you the right to make people uncomfortable? That's not okay." And he says back to her, "Well, what gives you the right to make me uncomfortable? You've been doing that this whole interview." And she stopped because she couldn't think of a good comeback. She stopped for a good, I don't know, maybe it was just 5 seconds. It seemed like it was like 30 seconds or though. It seemed like it was a while. And because of that one event, out of that entire straw man of Jordan Peterson's points, he became famous yet again. And to this date, I just remember seeing a Facebook post a week ago saying that his book has sold 3 million copies.
Keep in mind, this is supposed to be about how hate crimes are stupid. That is supposed to be the crux of this. But I think that a lot of this is we're proving that Think Before You Sleep is very familiar with Jordan Peterson. Probably watches a lot of it. I mean, I'm Canadian. Jordan Peterson is actually someone who theoretically I probably could have interacted with more than a few times. And I don't know this shit about him, nor do I care. Because to me, he's just another example of a leftist who's being eaten by the very monster he spent years creating. And now he's hailed as some champion of the right wing.
Massive for a book sale. But that's what's required to happen is you spend a bunch of years building competence at what your thing is. It could be cooking, it could be acting, it could be philosophy, whatever it is. And this would work for any business. And you're going to have one event that is going to prove your competence to other people. And, well, maybe you can manufacture these events. Maybe they should just happen and you're prepared for them. Maybe it's a little bit of both. But that's how this stuff works. And that's why this event was taking place. As far as the allegation goes, a politician named Kamala Harris was trying to get a lynch bill passed. Kamala Harris, who has ties to Jesse Smollett. And some of this stuff comes from a Stefan Molyneux video that I will post in the description. So if you want to learn more about this stuff, you can certainly just watch the video. He does a fairly good job of explaining this case. So I figured I would leave that to him instead of just re-explaining something that someone's already said. Is that there was a bill out to make lynching illegal. I don't know why this is like a big deal. One, killing somebody is already illegal. Two, when the fuck was the last time someone was lynched? Like I've heard.
Yeah, I didn't realize that lynching was legal to begin with. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that there's laws against vigilante justice. Pretty sure there's laws against murder, laws against assault, laws against all the steps for it. So the only reason why you'd make a special bill to make lynching illegal would be because A, you want to classify other things as lynching, and B, you're doing it for votes. So you want to make it look like you're tackling an issue that isn't being tackled. It's like imagine if you released a cereal and you put a label on it that said 100% human organ free. I mean, yeah, sure. Every other cereal on the shelf might also be human organ free. But because yours is the only one with the label that's saying it's human organ free, people are going to be like, oh, have I been eating human organs with my breakfast cereal this whole time? I'm going to need to have this one. Or, I guess another example would be, like, I don't know, some kind of cosmetics was like saying with a label, these cosmetics were not tested on animals. Like, was every other cosmetic tested on animals? Maybe, maybe not. But even if they weren't, people are going to assume that everyone without the label did the thing that is not on the label. So if you're going to make a bill that says, oh, we're going to make lynching illegal, the implication is that lynching was legal prior to this bill. Which, well, no. Pretty sure it's not, because I'm pretty sure that a gang of people going out and committing some kind of group-based homicide, yeah, pretty sure that's still a crime. So, yeah, it's done purely for PR. And, maybe to just fuck around with more people by expanding the definition of lynching.
Lots of crime on the news in my day. I had parents who watched the news nightly, and the news nightly, or the nightly news, is 90% criminal activity. This person got murdered, this gang thing happened, this high-speed chase happened. I had not once in my entire life heard of someone being lynched or being killed without trial. This is the basic definition of lynching. But for some reason, they wanted this bill to be popular. I imagine if I read the bill, it would make a lot more sense. There's probably certain privileges and certain rights that are afforded to a special interest group of people that they get if this bill gets renewed. And so, of course, like I said, Jesse Smollett and Kamala Harris were in kind of cahoots. And what better yet to make a bill get a lot of attention than if Jesse Smollett gets attacked by some Trump supporters and gets a hate crime thrown his way. And guess what? Even though this thing is likely false, that bill has so far passed the Senate, which means it's probably going to pass as an actual bill. Of course, the president has to say whether to sign it or not. But certainly, in light of this event, that bill has gotten some ground. And this is what they've been doing since the beginning of time. Certainly, if you've been following guns at all, if you own a firearm and you live, well, in any non-reasonable state in America, all they do with these things is just, and of course they're passing little bills during their daily lives, but all they really do in these things is just wait for whatever the next event that happens, and we're going to use all of the reporting on that. We're going to use media to sit there and help us out, and then we're going to pass gun bans with that media report. And you'll notice, if you've been paying a lot of attention, is that when shootings happen, but they are stopped by people who are just regular firearms owners. Like there was that big thing in Texas where this guy was an NRA trainer, and this other guy who was criminal was shooting up a church, and the guy who was the NRA guy shot and stopped the guy who shot at the church. In fact, so the church shooter was wearing a body armor, but it didn't have side plates on it. So our hero, in his fantastic accuracy, was able to shoot him once through the break in his body armor, and that caused the guy to flee. And not only did he cause the guy to flee, but this guy fucking chased the church shooter down and caught him and apprehended him until the police came around. This flies right in the fucking face of all the people who say guns to be banned because there's no such thing as a good use of a gun. Only cops can use guns properly. So they will never report any positive vigilante reports like that. They reported for like a week until they found out that, maybe not even that, until they found out that a legal gun owner stopped the person from shooting up the school. Because that's not something that helps their agenda. Now, there's that old quote, never let a crisis go to waste, and this is just more so that. What's a big event that everybody is talking about that we can use to fit our agenda?
Again, just a reminder, this is supposed to be about how hate crimes are stupid, and now we're going off about a tangent about the effectiveness of vigilante justice. Never do veganism, kids. Not even once. This is what veganism does to a motherfucker.
It could be promotion. Certainly, a lot of the false rape accusations. Like if you look at Christine Ford, she became nationally famous. She got like $1 million, and she got a book deal, and she got lots of fantastic attention that women love. And so why wouldn't you accuse a guy of raping you? And why wouldn't you hire a couple of extras from Hollywood to go pretend beat you up? That way you can get a little bit of self-promotion. Because think of it this way. This event's been pretty big so far. And if you need some notoriety, like if I think I'm going to be canceled off my show, Empire, I might say either I'm going to create some false flag event, that way I get back on the show, or I create some false flag event so that I can get enough promotion for myself. Kind of like Miley Cyrus, who was the good girl, becomes the corrupted post-high school girl that did a lot to promote her career. So it's not like it's an unintelligent move. And so why wouldn't this guy do the same thing? It may be the case that his time in Empire is over. Let me go get a different show by being the guy who's well noted for being the victim of a hate crime. And plus, maybe we'll get an anti-lynching bill passed. So let me tie this in, because if I'm going to use an event like this, I'm certainly going to add some philosophy in, because I think a lot of people who are into MGTOW, or a lot of people who are into these types of messages, are very much so into self-improvement. And so if you're trying to get something to work, there's going to be some type of pivotal event that has to happen for you to get noticed. So if you think you're at that skill level, certainly you should be building up, or maybe you kind of do both at the same time. Certainly
You're going to talk about MGTOW and self-improvement one sentence away from, hey, if you want to promote yourself, make a false flag event where you're a victim. Yeah, I don't think that you'd want to put those two things together. To be like, oh, hey, if you are trying to improve yourself, build up your skill level, and then create popularity yourself by creating a false victim narrative about you. Yeah, that's a great idea. You should do that. Like, seriously, this is... That's frustrating. He's just very frustrating. Let's wrap this up.
big fan of trying to integrate as much as possible into the higher skill levels as soon as you possibly can. So if you can do both, certainly do both. But what you're looking for is to have enough skill mixed in with some type of event that gets people to know who you are. So certainly, if you were a really great chef, what would get people to know who you are? Don't just work at a restaurant, but work in a way that would have a lot of people figure out your name. And certainly that can be used for any sort of business concept. This is just pure observation on my part. And certainly it seemed to, like, I didn't intend these to happen, but a lot of my subscribers have gone primarily from 2 different videos. I talked about DDJ and Turtling and Monkey and their little events, and I talked about the Kick Vic thing, and I thought, maybe those would get 100 views. But the Turtling and Monkey DDJ video has almost 10,000, which is much over my average views. My average views are about 100 right now. And when I first made those videos, my average views were at maybe 15 to 30. So just from pure observation from YouTube.
15 to 30? Average views? I mean, damn, like, I get upset when my shorts, like, don't get above, like, 70 or whatever. Huh. Well, I guess I'm part of the warband and he wasn't, so. I got a support network, he didn't, but whatever. Let's continue.
From pure observation from other people and what's happened to them and their channels, like certainly a lot of YouTubers will have one pivotal event. They'll have, a handful of subscribers, and then they'll have their pivotal event, and then they'll get like 1 million subscribers in a couple days. And so you don't have to be a YouTuber to use these principles. You don't have to be a YouTuber to notice these principles. Just know that this is what goes on. I've certainly used it myself, used YouTube to figure out how businesses actually get successful. One is that pivotal moment of success that will boost you quite a bit. Whatever that happens to be, that's something that you have to figure out for yourself, I guess. But even if you're just looking at the day-to-day YouTube, how to keep your following, what you have to do is have a good storefront. And this is pretty well known. So I'm sure, if you've ever looked at anything about YouTube, people will say this, and you probably already know this, is you got to have a good storefront. Every store that wants to attract business has to have a good sign out. And so your good sign on the door is your thumbnail. What type of sign is going to get people to walk into my business? And then what you're going to do as well.
Tits. Tits are going to get people to walk into your business. The current YouTube meta is you go online, you go to nhentai.com, you find a porn comic on there, you crop it so it's technically safe for work, and that's your thumbnail. That's the meta right now. Why? Because sex sells, and it always has. That, or apparently you do some fucking wide-mouthed soy boy face with a question in the title. But we're all familiar with the clickbait meta. The new meta is cropped porn.
It's not just have a good picture on the wall. You're going to have a fantastic title. Like, why would I want to go to this place this place essentially? Well, I want to go to this place because this thing I like is being talked about here. Or maybe there's some type of mystery. Like, what was that title? What does that mean? And typically, if you're going to have a good title, you either you go by current events, or you leave some type of mystery, or sometimes, like I've seen YouTubers purposely make titles that are too long so people will.
Yes, the format for Lost, and what was it, J.J. Abrams? Yeah, he promoted the whole mystery box thing. If you want to keep your viewers engaged, give them a mystery box. Give them a question, something that you think that there's something worthwhile inside, but really the answer isn't actually worth it, and then you just keep presenting mystery box after mystery box. Maybe you open a mystery box, maybe you don't. But yeah, just keep providing questions that you don't really provide answers to. Maybe provide enough answers to make people think that the questions that they want are going to have answers, but ultimately people are far more interested in speculating the questions than they are about actually getting the disappointing solution.
Click on the videos because of that, but that's essentially what you do. And like I said, these are universal principles. Use them at your choosing, whether you decide to be someone who's on YouTube or not. And the likely thing is you're not going to be a YouTuber, but you can certainly use it elsewhere. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. If you like the video, please hit the subscribe button. If you're new, hit the like button. If you just liked it in general, you already subscribed, though you could like it without subscribing, I guess.
Again, this was supposed to be about how hate crimes are stupid, and it's turned into this is how you find success via false flag operations, and why you ultimately should prepare to be successful at any moment, because you never know what event is going to actually skyrocket you into popularity. But anyway, so yeah, this guy's bloody exhausting to listen to. All right, so well, heck, there's 4 segments that I can clip and upload as their own standalone videos. I'm going to get some fresh ice and run to the bathroom real quick. So if y'all have any questions or comments, we'll do maybe about 20-ish minutes or so of Q&A, or just kind of gentle chatting. And then we'll wrap it up. So, brief intermission, guys. I'll read whatever the heck you post in the meantime. Yeah, no, Matcha, we ain't gonna do more. I am way too many rum and cokes deep to start pulling into next episode, and I've already categorized the episodes I want to do each stream, so I don't want to shuffle that order up too much. And I'll actually pop back here. I usually don't get to use my chatting screen for very much. Oh, hold on. Come on, allow me to move this bloody thing. Ah, well, back to the viewing scene. False. I think before you falsified himself, teaching MGTOW then. Well, I mean, by definitely turning against MGTOW, he kind of, paints himself as a victim of the MGTOW. And the mean MGTOW content creators like Undead Chronic, who, he didn't do his proper research and therefore he's a bad person, even though Undead Chronic has said multiple times that he's not MGTOW. But no, it's Chronic who didn't do research, not Sean of Think Before You Sleep. He always does research against everybody he has a beef with and makes a video on. But what can you do? Looking at the premiums and more the warships instead of listening to Think Before You Sleep was far entertaining. I mean, I guess I can't blame you, not knowing World of Warships myself, but I'm pretty sure that any sort of game that involves warfare and moderately historically accurate battleships would be far more interesting than listening to a vegan yoga instructor ramble about whatever came across his video feed. Yeah, random guy, he just does not go back on track. Maybe by the time we get into his MGTOW era of content he will, but no promises on when. Even if I manage to get through 4 videos a stream, this is still going to take many, many streams to get to, because there's 144 videos in this archive, and we haven't even hit video 40. So literally, it's going to take half a year before we get through his backlog of stuff. But yeah, you're right, August Line. As soon as he did a face reveal, he opened himself up to ridicule. Like, because that's the thing. Now you look at these videos, like, hit in your mind, like, his face is there. He honestly had more credibility before he put his face out. I might even have to put that in the videos. Like, just get a PNG overlay of his face and just put it, like, dead center of the video for all these replays, just to remind these people who exactly is talking rather than this faceless voice. I thought a face reveal would be a good play. Honestly, yeah. I think... Okay. Here is my pie-in-the-sky conspiracy theory. I think that YouTube promotes videos where you show your actual real face because it wants to encourage viewers to upload their biometric data to be sold to third-party companies. I have absolutely no proof that this is the thing, but I would not be surprised if that is exactly the case. Will I ever do another Souls-like playthrough like I did Elden Ring? If there's demand for it, I mean, I haven't beaten Dark Souls 2 or 3 yet. I'd be willing to do those. Like, I'd play through Dark Souls 2 in a proper stream and actually try to beat the bloody game and finish it. Bloodborne, can you even get Bloodborne or Sekiro on PC? Sekiro would be kind of neat to do blind. I'm familiar with the lore, but haven't actually played the game yet, so that wouldn't be bad. So, and I mean, like, there are other Souls-like games. Actually, Code Vein is one that I've been curious to try out. It's kind of like anime Dark Souls, but like with vampires. So no, I wouldn't object to doing it. I just wanted to take a bit of a break from the Soulsborne bits and do some smaller games that are a bit faster to finish up. But I wouldn't object to it. Maybe I'll put up a poll after the El Shaddai stuff is over, when it's basically done. And we can pick some new kind of Soulsborne RPG to work with. Yeah, y'all think my biometric promotion thing's viable? That's the thing. Like, I have no proof of it, but at the same time, like, it sounds plausible enough, and it would explain why stuff where you show your face does get promoted more in the algorithm. Code Vein has tits, enough said. All right, okay, well, that to me is a vote for Code Vein. But then here's the real question. Do I use a male or female avatar for Code Vein? Because I would not object to playing through Code Vein as anime ghost waifu. Like, you know, there's neat possibilities there. I mean, honestly, like, I think that YouTube would have every reason to incentivize people using their actual face. Because, well, if you're using your actual face, yeah, you're uploading all the biometric data, which in turn makes you that much easier to identify in public via security cameras reading your biometric data. But it also provides proof of your real-life identity. which can be also used as a weapon against you. Case in point, Russell Brand, real person, real identity, real consequences when he goes against what people want him to say. Girl avatar? All right, you know what? No, okay, honestly, since I've been interested in Code Vein and I also know basically nothing about it, after we're done with El Shaddai, we'll do some Code Vein. I'll get that stuff set up and installed, and we'll do Code Vein as the Ghost Waifu. I think that'd be fun. Feel like the female avatars are more fluid? Yep, 100%. We're going to do a long-haired, as purple-skinned as we can reasonably get, vampire ghost anime waifu, and we'll go through Code Vein. So, yeah, no spoilers, guys, because I know nothing about Code Vein aside from it's like Dark Souls and it's got vampires. They can't deperson an anonymous avatar? 100%. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, YouTube wants you to be vulnerable to their policies, so they're going to encourage people to do things that will make them more vulnerable to pressure from YouTube. Showing your face, like, especially in this day and age, your identity is the number one thing that can be used against you, and it's only going to get more prominent as they try to make more and more things tied to your real life identity. I mean, heck, they've gotten to the point where they are proposing using the unique pattern of veins on your wrist as checkout identification. As though it's like, oh no, it is so inconvenient to use cash or card. Just wave your hand in front of a sensor. Isn't that so much easier? It's like, no. No, cash was convenient. Card is even more convenient. Just, like, legit, all these fucking tech people trying to convince us that making a transaction with cash or credit card is so inconvenient that we need to use biometric scanners just to make the process a fraction of a second faster. Oh, oh my god. Okay, sorry. I just had a devious fucking thought. Like, if your wrist veins actually become something that a decent amount of people use as their fucking checkout, all people will literally need is a picture of your wrist, and they will be able to scan that picture on these biometric scanners, and they'll be able to steal your identity that way. Like, fuck your PIN number, fuck your unique credit card number, screw your bank, screw actually having to pay cash. All someone needs is a photograph of your wrist, and they can pretend to be you at the checkout. But hey, whatever. I'm going to not participate as long as I'm physically able to. And while I can't verify this, I have heard that if someone at the checkout downright refuses to take cash from you, then whatever the heck you're taking out is free. I don't know if that's legally enforced anywhere. But you know, I check your local laws to see if that's a thing, because if they try to make a cashless society and they don't update the laws, then, you know, the rest of us all get to pretend like we're that privileged demographic that can walk out with whatever merchandise they want. Okay, yeah, honestly, like, the OnlyFans stuff, like, again, the problem with OnlyFans is you need an active social media presence to have a proper account there, because they check that as part of your verification. Like, that's the only reason the ghost waifu doesn't have an OnlyFans, is because I basically need to create a false, like, Twitter or Facebook account for her firsthand. So, like, if I wanted to make ghost waifu OnlyFans, first thing I have to do is make her so she has a consistent character model, as realistic as possible. And then I need to create a social media profile for her that's consistent enough that it could somewhat pass for it. And then I could open up the OnlyFans. Which, I mean, is it doable? Sure. Is it a royal pain in the ass? And I'm already putting in enough hours in the week to work that I know actually pays more. But, I mean, it's not off the table. But I really ought to do more of a survey of my audience to see what kind of merch they'd subscribe to. Because, like, I don't know. Is the ghost waifu cute enough that people would pay for spicy images of her? Or should there be a bit more variety? Should I increase the cast of characters of waifus to appeal to more niche audiences? That's the thing, random guy. I think too that they're obligated to accept cash, but if they refuse cash, are you legally allowed then to walk out of the store with a product without having the popo come and light you up like a Christmas tree? Release them in sets like Hololive? Oh. I. Okay, look. If I was making enough money off of this kind of stuff to do so, I would. But I legit do not have the time to release 4 to 5 waifus at a time and provide somewhat spicy pics for the lot of them. Even with AI, that is a bit much. Even if I'm having AI produce images for the lot of them on a regular basis, that's a bit much to try and create. Especially if you want print quality stuff, I'd need like a literal squad of artists producing this stuff around the clock. Even then, oh, like it's hard enough creating a series of spicy images for one model, to say nothing of a whole series of them. I mean, maybe I could try doing a different one once per month, but I'd have to work on training the AI in advance so that it can recognize each specific character in its own Laura. I mean, again, not impossible to do, but I've only got so much time in a day, guys, and I'm trying to keep up with the shorts and the live streams and guest starring and ideally releasing actual content videos. Embrace your queer identity and claim you're an oppressed minority. That's the thing. Like, am I a Grigga? Because I'm not green. Am I a Pigga? Periga? We'd have to consult Chronic when he gets out of his cabin in the middle of the woods. If waifus succeed on OnlyFans, will that mean you're going to be a cyber pimp? Yeah. Although, you know, the official... Oh, that's the thing. The problem is, like, a pimp is one who, is typically actively engaging in relations with his talent. No. I'll be just the manager, not the player in a management profession. Just the management. Although, honestly, I think... initial test run would probably be trying to create an Instagram account just for one of them. So, like, if I can create a realistic ghost waifu and create an Instagram account for said realistic ghost waifu and actually make it believable enough that she could get somewhat popular, then said Instagram ghost waifu could theoretically translate into having an OnlyFans account. Again, not impossible, just it's gonna not be immediate. And I'd have to see how viable having a fake realistic human. I mean, I've seen the filters these days. You probably can't tell the difference between an AI image and a regular chick with a filter. So it's doable. You're gray ghost, so you're gray, but you're also purple and also green. Because I'm an honorary green skin because I don't actually have the green going. Oh, Grega, there we go. Andrew Tate. I mean, am I not really just an AI purveyor of Andrew Tate shit? I mean, we're both regurgitating red pill points. It's just he uses his fucking lack of a chin and rented Bugattis to promote his stuff. I use AI generated scripts, voices, and images to promote red pill stuff. So, I mean, really, at the end of the day, what's actually the difference between us? Oh, wait. The difference is that I'm not promoting screwing ladyboys. That's the difference. But we're at about the 2.5 hour mark. I have consumed, God, how much booze have I consumed? Okay, really not that much liquor, but enough that I'm feeling it. So I think we're going to call it here for now. And like, seriously, thank y'all for tuning in. It's been a while since we did this. And I had fun. Maybe I'll be able to get this back to being a weekly thing. I know y'all are probably starving for content with the current chronic drought, but keep an eye out, because we might be able to get some other people to hack into Chronic's account and hijack a live stream or two. But until then, y'all look forward to it. This has been the Great Ghost, purveyor of AI-generated red pills. Y'all have a good night. Peace out, Warband.